That's an exciting part of the Bartok Concerto for orchestra. The whole orchestra is playing. There's all this interweaving of parts, independence of parts, and yet you have this driving, inexorable, intense rhythmic motor that's going all the way through the whole thing. One of the problems I have with it is I always tend to play it too fast. I might have played it too fast that time too. And what is too fast? Well, you listen to different performances and you're going to hear different tempi. So too fast doesn't even really make sense. But there are markings in the score. It says 76 to the dotted quarter note. So now, to me, that tempo feels good when I play the first big call. And by the way, this is in unison with the second trumpet player, so let's see if we can play it in tune. So that energy, that feels right at that point. But when it starts rolling later on, like the first section that I played, it doesn't feel right to me. So we can take a lesson from that. What you want to do is feel the swing, feel the groove at a very wide range of tempi. So I might put it on, I'll put it on 76. And there you heard the eighth note pulse. So I'm going to suggest to you is lay back in the beat. If you put your metronome on, let the metronome beat, which is a constant, carry you, and you just set back into that beat. And that way you're not going to rush like I tend to do. Let's see if I can play it at that tempo. So the important thing to realize from doing that is there's a tendency on the quicker moving notes, on the eighth notes, to rush. Dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da da dun 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 ding dun dun. So if you get a feeling of bounce, and I suggest that you actually dance with it a little bit. Now don't, if you're playing in this section of an orchestra, don't do this because it'll really annoy the first trumpet player. I can tell you that from experience. But you have to dance inside with it. So what are the main things? The main things are the feeling of bounce, the dance, if you will, and the character of the sound and the articulation. And when you hear a great orchestra play, those match. They match across the whole orchestra. So this is the thing to listen for. When you listen to a recording, when you listen to a great performance, when you listen to your teacher play, if your teacher's an experienced orchestra player, listening, you want to be listening for those things that give you that sense of character. Now, there are lots of technical problems, and we'll just address a couple of them because I have a student coming in a few minutes, so I'll try and get to them. One of the first areas is we're covering a fair amount of range. So I think it's at 354, 5, 6, 8, yeah, 359, bar 359, in that area. Then at bar what, 364, it goes up to the high C. So most people are really worried about that. Let me try it once again. So I'm going to recommend, and this is a basic practice technique that I use all the time, sustain. If we're not comfortable playing that note, if it feels a little bit risky, if we're not totally consistent with it, then we're going to want to get away from it. We're going to want to get past it as quickly as possible. And what you want to develop is a sense of, oh, I want to live here. I want to climb up on this mountain and look around and enjoy the scenery. And what that means in practical terms is it feels good and it sounds good. And now, if that's not the case, what I suggest, and this is another basic practice technique that I use all the time, is transpose it. So you play the same thing, just play it down a step, play it down another step, play it down a fifth, play it down an octave, to develop that sense of the fun in playing that whole line leading up to the high note, until you're not thinking about it as a high note anymore. You're thinking about it as a note with a certain sound and character. But there's a very important idea, I guess you'd say, that I use a lot. And it's, well, I'll probably talk about this more because I think it bears some thought. And that is the idea of where am I? In other words, when I'm playing, am I comfortable? What's happening with the sound? Am I ready to do what's coming next? Where am I psychologically? Am I stressed? Am I distracted? Am I engaged with the music? Or am I, thinking about something else? Or am I concentrating on how I'm playing the trumpet instead of letting the music help me by concentrating on what the music should sound like? So that's a lot of ideas right there, but these are really important questions to ask yourself, and it's summed up in, where am I? Where am I right now? So as I play that high C, well, that takes a fair amount of energy, at least for me it does. And I'm noticing I'm kind of trying too hard physically when I'm playing that note. So I might do that over and over again without strain, with enough rest, until I can get a handle on, now I can sustain it and I feel like it's comfortable to be here. I like being here on the note. I like the sound of it. I might play with it, play with a vibrato, for example, which in this case I'm not using any. I'll let that come in. Or I'll play it at different dynamic levels. Or I'll play it with articulation, especially for me with articulation. Can I do that so that it still feels comfortable? And if that feels like I'm straining, I don't do it. Stop. Rest. Do something easier for a while and gradually build up until that feels comfortable. Okay, now something that if you're studying with a teacher, an experienced orchestral player for a teacher, they're going to be talking a lot about articulation. And the reason is, in the orchestra, there are a few instruments that can make a percussive sound. Of course, the percussion instruments can, and the brass can. It's very difficult to get that kind of sound on the rest of the wind instruments, or certainly on string instruments. You can hit the strings with the wood of the bow, the coleño, I think that's called, and that's percussion. But to get that snap, to get that kind of instantaneous explosion of sound is very difficult for the other instruments. So it's really up to the brass and the percussion to do this. And so that's one thing you want to practice. So I'm running out of time here, but I want you to listen for it. There are different kinds of accents. You have marcato, that little upside down V over the note. And that's something to practice. Practice it all by itself. You're trying to get a certain quality of sound there. Now you heard I'm not just hitting the front end of the note, I'm making a shape to the note. That's what gives it its character. If I play it something like this, that sounds, as Maestro Levine used to say, it sounds very wet. And so we want something that's a little bit more crispy than that. A good way of describing it. Then another set of accents that you have are these tenuto markings. Now some people think that line underneath the note means to play it long. And I think of it as primarily as an emphasis. So I'm leaning on the note, but I'm not doing a hard articulation at the beginning, just a clear articulation. Now I'm trying too hard. I'm trying to smash those notes. I'm trying to, tongue the snot out of that. And that means I'm physically trying too hard. I need to chill a little bit, let the air do the work. You see how strongly I'm pronouncing ta 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 ta. The basic principle behind this is when you're playing in an orchestra, you're far away from the audience, you're at the back of the ensemble, and everything that you do needs to be pronounced extremely clearly so that someone in the audience can experience it as if they were closer. You have to overdo the pronunciation. It's similar to being a Shakespearean actor, where you have to pronounce your lines with tremendous clarity and authority. It's very, very similar to that. So as you're working on this, that's probably one of the primary things to keep in mind. Now, I haven't talked about all the other details because I don't have time, but check out your pitch. These are big open intervals, and the music is interweaving all the time. So everybody needs to be putting the notes in the same place. And that's challenging all by itself. So work on these things separately, enjoy the process, and you'll be able to get to the point where it's fun to play this piece. And that's the whole point. This should be an enjoyable thing, not a laborious task. Okay, speaking of labor, get to work, and I'll see you again sometime. Have a good day. Bye-bye.